good most of the time. Hi, my name is Sam Johnson and I am a voice teacher. Today I will be reacting to and analyzing Ariana Grande Best Live Vocals 2015 to 2016. Now this is a really long video, so if you want me to do a part 2, comment in the comments where you comment. If you are interested in singing and want to become a better singer, I highly recommend checking out my new book, Open Your Mouth, Learn How to Sing. There's a link in the description. I think it's really good. I've been working on it for a while, and if you're not a better singer after you read it and you do all of the things, if we ever see each other in public, if you warn me, I will let you punch me in the arm as hard as you want, but you have to be honest that it didn't help you and tell it to my face. So go check it out. So I was plunking out on my keyboard what note I think she was going up to, and it was low every time. She's got such a high voice and she's such a good singer that when she sings things that for normal people will sound really high, it just doesn't sound as high to me in her voice. The little guitar stuff at the beginning I think is awesome. I love seeing really good singers be kind of silly, and I think I've seen a few videos of her just being, you know, a silly little goose. And I think that more people should do that because it's cool to be a silly little goose. So leave a comment below of ways that you believe that people should be silly little gooses, little geese. Awesome. I mean, the belty G I think is awesome. She sounds so good. It's really interesting hearing that tone next to when she goes to the high C. And you can hear when she goes to the C how it becomes this loftier, more classical kind of timbre. And if she wanted to make that sound belty and still sound kind of like an ooh, she would have to open her mouth quite a bit. It probably wouldn't be a true ooh. If you keep the same vowel shaping that she's doing in this loftier way, and you add the energy that would be required to make it sound mixy, to make it sound like full voice, it would almost certainly sound strained up there. When she goes up to the G, you can see how open her mouth is. Open Your Mouth, Learn How to Sing, a book by Sam Johnson. But really, as open as her mouth is really helping her at that point in her range, where I think a lot of people will start opening their mouth that much a little bit earlier, maybe up to an octave under that. And that's where it might lock you into more of a yell sort of sound. So anyway, she's really good at that. I don't generally recommend people practice with their head up as much as she did, but there is a fair argument that a slight elevation of your head as you go toward high notes is good and helpful technique. And so if it helps people, go for it. Just watch out that it doesn't feel like it's hurting and that you're not habitually just raising as you start going toward high notes, because that's a different problem. I love that. The going back and forth between the breathy sound and the more belty sound. When she goes belty, it almost never sounds super pressed to me, and I think it's because she usually bounces back and forth between the really breathy stuff and the heavier mix. That's a really good thing to do when you're singing high belty notes, actually, is just try doing it in more of a traditional head voice or a really light falsetto. Oftentimes, the placement that you get when you're singing in falsetto or head voice is going to be the same placement that we might want to aim for when we start adding in more pressure. But I also don't want to feel like head voice is inherently a classical thing, because it's not necessarily. And when she's going up to these really high notes in full voice, I bet that she feels it primarily in her head. And so I think that if we use head voice to refer specifically to one sound quality, it's really limiting of the experience that a lot of people have when they're singing high notes. And so I think of head voice as a bigger umbrella of just anything that you feel in your head. And I think that a really aggressive high mix oftentimes is a form of head voice. It's nuts. It sounds like it's easier for her the higher that she goes, which is not an uncommon thing for people who have really high voices. So I think there's an attitude that high notes are just inherently hard, and that's not always true. If you have the voice type that works really well when you're singing high notes and you sing it in a really balanced way, sometimes it can be really quite easy. For me, I have a voice, and when I sing really, really high notes, it's significantly easier than the notes like 2 or 3 underneath it. For example, if I'm going up to a B on maybe a hey or something, hey, that's a lot easier for me than if I go on the A flat. Hey, it's just a tougher note for me. And I don't find that shameful to say that even me, professional voice teacher Sam Johnson, author of Open Your Mouth, Learn How to Sing, has parts of his voice that are kind of harder. I think that everyone has parts of their voice that they just don't like as much, which means that when we are choosing songs to make us sound good, it's really important to choose songs that focus on the parts of our voice that we feel really good at and that we sound really good at. I think Ariana does a really good job of saying, I sound really good up here. It doesn't matter that no one can sing along with me because it's just too high for like a normal person. I'm going to do what works best for me. And it just happens to be that that's a really impressive thing for a lot of people. So I think it contributes to her success. She's just so good at like choosing when to be held on and when to be released that she can just toggle back and forth on a dime. But I would be really curious to ask her about her experience as she does that in terms of placement. Do you feel the placement kind of in the same way as you bounce back and forth? I bet that she does, but I'm curious what does feel different and what feels the same when she's bouncing between full voice and more of a flipped voice. This was actually the first clip in this that she did sound a little bit more on the pressed end to me. And again, her head's all the way up here. For me, as soon as I do that, even if I'm not singing, I just feel a lot more tension. And I think that positions that you feel tension in when you're just like hanging out and not singing generally will feel even more tense when you go sing, but it's working for her. If we were in voice lessons together, she was coming to me and like, I want to just make sure that my singing is as pitch perfect and top shape as it can be, then that would be a thing that I'd want to explore. It's just like, why do we do this? Does it feel different out here? Explore all of the different options, because when working with someone of her skill, and honestly of any skill, I think it's best to make it a dialogue. I don't like the whole like master apprentice thing where there's this one person gatekeeping all of the knowledge and whatever they say is complete scripture. I just don't think that's the truth. But I think that if you treat your students like they are competent people who can decide what's working well for them or what isn't, that then you can, it makes voice lessons a lot more fun because it's just exploring all of the things that they are capable of doing, giving praise on the things that you think are working well, and asking questions to kind of direct their attention to things that might be working well that maybe they were less focused on as they were singing. Because I think a lot of times people will be singing so well and they'll be focused on something else, or like maybe they'll be trying to sound exactly like Ariana Grande, and if they don't sound exactly like Ariana Grande, they might feel really bad. But if you just kind of redirect their attention to like, here's some of the things that you did really well, it doesn't have to sound like Ariana Grande, then maybe they'll be a little bit more happy with their singing. And I think that's a really important thing. Singing should make you feel good most of the time. She's so good. And when she goes to those really high notes, it's always the G. She goes up to the G over and over in this clip, it sounds like she is starting from a smaller place. A lot of times people talk about placement with singing. Placement's a weird idea with singing because I don't think that singing feels the same for everyone, but it does feel very similarly for a lot of people. And for a lot of people, it feels like low notes are big and in a lower part of their body. As they go higher, it usually feels small and in a higher part of their body. And I think that if you kind of notice that sensation, then it becomes something that you can ask for. What are some of the things she's doing to encourage it to go into that small place? Well, for her, it's probably totally instinctual of like, I know when I go up there, this is what it feels like to sing well. But for people who don't really have that instinct, just backing off on the volume when you go to the top note is usually enough. That's a little bit high for me. I can't do a demonstration. But if I'm going to a similar part of my range, let's say that C, and I go to the something about, and I try to make it sound and feel as big as maybe a low note does to me, some, it just is yelling. Versus if I think some, that encourages it to go up into a headier quality, which feels just significantly better for me. And that generally seems to be the case with my students as well. Is if we just think about letting it go smaller and getting a little bit quieter as we go higher, things are easier, even if you go into these really full sounds. And if it's not loud enough when you first start like that, then we can at least use that smaller onset, that smaller place when we're first starting a note to find what something can feel like and then get loud within that by adding more support, just thinking louder. There are a whole bunch of things that you can do, and you'll learn them when you read my book, Open Your Mouth, Learn How to Sing. Oh, no, that one. Do it this night. This is probably my favorite era of Ariana Grande. I love this era of Ariana Grande, and I really like Ariana Grande's music now, but this is the stuff that I listen to a ton. Anyway, that was a good clip. Just more of the same. Really, really easy singing. When she goes to the really quiet stuff up high, that's where she closes her mouth a little bit more. So while my book is titled Open Your Mouth, sometimes you need to close your mouth when you're singing. And more and more I'm coming around to the idea that for really high soprano voices, when you get up high enough, you just need to close your mouth a little bit. It's a thing that I don't completely understand why it works, but it seems to work for about half of the people who I vocalize up there. It's like for about half of the people, you have to open your mouth really, really big. And the other half, once you get to a certain point, you just have to close it and back off on the energy. But again, if she was adding the sort of energy that she would need to sing a really belty note and using that smaller mouth, it wouldn't work. It just would not work. It doesn't matter how good she is. It just like would not work. Smart money better not be better off without you. Nice. She sang gut a little. It's not got where her tongue drops a lot. So I hear the vowel modification from the position of her tongue. If we rewind a little, I'm curious what her tongue looks like. Yeah, we can't see it. But I hear more than ah. And to me, that is like, that I've got. Having that little vowel modification. The modification starts by me thinking instead of ah. But if I don't know how to find that I might play around with tongue position. So if I go got, you can't see my tongue. Got. It modifies the vowel a little bit. Then there's the jaw drop amount. So it's like, got. If you drop your jaw more, in order to keep that sort of vowel modification, your tongue needs to drop with it. But anyway, I don't hear her going to what I think a lot of people would, which is that pure ah vowel, which again, just doesn't really work if you're belting up here. It turns into a yell. I mean, this compilation is her just like doing the same thing over and over, which is awesome. Like, she's so good at it. She is so good at it. But I think it speaks to the value of getting really good at one skill and then choosing to use that skill a lot when you're performing. Like, her belty stuff around E to G is just spectacular. She sounds so good up there. So there's a reason she uses it all the time. When she goes to that really flipped, rounder voice and sometimes really breathy, she sounds awesome. So she does it a lot. When she goes into her more middle range, so stuff maybe from C4 to C5, she doesn't open her mouth very much. It's a very spoken kind of coordination, which is really good for her. And I think that if you kind of look at all of those things, you can construct this model of what she does vocally that works really well. And I do think that even if you don't have the exact same voice type she has, you can follow similar rules of like, okay, when we go to flipped sounds and not full mix sounds, close your mouth a little more, back off on volume. When you go to middle of your voice, delay opening your mouth as long as you can. And probably let's keep the back of your tongue up just a little bit. When you get to the very high end of your belty voice, you're going to need to start opening your mouth, but you have to let that spoken quality stay. So we're not going, that I've got, because I wouldn't say that. I'd say that I've got, that I've got. Keeping it more spoken as I open my mouth into a less spoken coordination.
I was under your spell, like a jelly. Sweet honey, baby, on the highway to hell. Said I only wanna die alive, never by the hands of a broken heart. Don't wanna hear you lie, now that I've become who I really are.
So her runs are spectacular, right? Interesting when she went to the I only want to die. I think a lot of people might say like, oh, it sounds nasal. To me, it doesn't really sound nasal because it doesn't sound like this kind of quality where if we plug our nose while we're doing this, it really changes the qualities of the sound. I don't really get that because I think that her soft palate is still raised, but it sounds quite bright, which I think a lot of people, as soon as they hear a bright sound, they're like, oh, it's nasal. I don't think that's inherently true. But if we're going back to the idea of placement, maybe she does just sort of think I'm placing it in my nose when I get up here, and that's an easier thing to do. And maybe a little bit of that extra brightness that people think of as nasality creeps in when she does that. But it did sound like she knew exactly where that was going to go when she jumped up into that place. And it sounded to my ear a little bit less broad than the album recording. I'm never going to understand the jaw thing, like why she adjusts so much with it, but as long as it doesn't make her too tense, you know, keep doing you, Ariana. That's it. It's a distracting thing, I think, for me too. Like, especially if she was singing musical theater, which would she ever? I feel like if she was doing that much movement, I don't know. It just is not my favorite thing. I still think that for like 99% of people, as soon as you start moving your jaw that much, it creeps, like tension creeps into your whole kinesthetic chain, and it's just less efficient. But maybe for you it works. Just if you're watching her and like, oh, she does this, therefore I must for it to sound good. I don't think that is true. Just experiment with a few different things and be aware that for a lot of people that doesn't really work as well. If it works for you, that's great. But yeah. Okay, so now she's up at that B flat area, which is high. It's a really, really high note. Her mouth is huge as she's doing that. If her mouth was as small as it is when she's doing her whistle stuff or her flip stuff, it just would not work. And that's kind of what I guess the theme of this is some things work really well when you're singing anything, and some things only work when you're singing one way. And I hope you take that to think like there's not just one right way of singing everything, and ultimately it just depends on like, does it feel right for you? Does it kind of get the emotion across you're trying to get across, and do people like it? I like it a lot. I really love when she sings up there. It's one of my favorite things about voices is her voice when she sings up there. It just sounds so good. It is quite impressive that she's able to have such agility vocally while she's singing in such a full way. That's something that I think that because she spent so much time singing in her flipped, hyper runny place, hyper melismatic, she's so good at singing light and fast. And I think that because she's done that a lot, it kind of has opened up the ability to do it loud and fast. Again, I'd be really curious, like what sort of placement differences she notices between the two voices. So wonderful singing, as always, Ariana Grande of 2015 to 2016. Just really powerhouse stuff. I love the sounds that she was getting at this part of her career, and I think she still is awesome, but these songs just, they have a special place in my heart because I've listened to them the most, and you really like the things that you have listened to the most. So thank you, Ariana, for making songs that I want to listen to a lot. If you like this video and you want me to make the second part, please leave a comment below and go tell all of your friends to also leave a comment below. If you want to learn how to become a better singer or learn what it's like to have my brain, please go read my book, Open Your Mouth, Learn How to Sing. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day.